welcome to today's webinar, Shifty Market, Get the Right List Price Every Time with MAPS Coach Steve Schlueter. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available within 24 hours on the MAPS YouTube channel. We will share the link in the chat momentarily. Currently, everyone's on mute. However, we do value your participation, so we ask that if you have any questions for Steve, please type them into the chat box. Following the meeting, if you have any questions about today's call or our other coaching programs, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. And that's all for me, Steve. Take it away.
Hey, thank you, Rodrigo. Hey, welcome, everyone. Let me go ahead and set this up to Spotlight. Perfect. So welcome. So today, we get to have a conversation around dealing with a shifty market. How do we get the right price every single time in our listings, provided, of course, we've got the motivated. And so as we get into this today, let me just start with a little introduction. My name's Steve Schlueter. I'm the co-coach of Never Ending Referrals. My co-coach Tammy Younks is on vacation in Mexico, so I'll be flying solo with you today. And if you would do me a favor, please make sure you mute if you've got a loud background. I'd love to have your questions in the chat. I'll pause periodically to take questions, dig deeper on explanation. And before we get into this, as the coach and co-coach of a program called Never Ending Referrals, I want to share with you some perspective on these conversations that we have with potential buyers and sellers and the foundation that they set for the relationships that we have, ultimately the referrals that we get. It's in these times when there are changes or there is moderation in our market where we really become valuable. We become that trusted advisor and really get to guide people into making great decisions. We're moving into a skill-based market. And today I want to give you a skill that's really going to help you make an impact for your clients, get quality listings that are going to sell, and get them priced more often at the right price immediately. So let me share with you something that's kind of a foundation or a tenet of the things that we teach in Never Ending Referrals. And I'm going to give you this perspective as we go into this and kind of how this fits and some of the philosophy around our teachings in our program, Never Ending Referrals. And this came from the Harvard Business Review. And I heard Gary Keller and Jay Papasan having a conversation around this as they were discussing leaders and the people they led, and how do they develop trust in those relationships with the people they led. And this came from the Harvard Business Review. And as I heard the conversation, what became crystal clear to me is this is exactly how an agent has success with a relationship-based, database-driven business. And it's called the trust triangle. So when we think about this thing called the trust triangle, well, how does trust get established? And we think about how trust gets established, it starts off with logic. And the logic piece is, I know you can do it. Your reasoning and your judgment are sound. And how that applies to today, as we get into this conversation today, is when things are changing and they're hearing the media talk about changes in the market, and maybe it's not changing in your market, and you have to be able to counter the media, you're going to have to be able to back it up. And they're going to want to know that your judgment is sound, and you're going to back that out with evidence and strategy to help them make the best decisions for them. And by the way, this is where empathy comes in. The empathy piece, as we talk about today, is they have to believe and they have to experience that you really care about them and what they desire to accomplish, their goals, their end game, that they are important. Not you getting a sale, not you getting a listing, you taking care of them. And by the way, they get to experience this in a way that's authentically you. It doesn't feel salesy. It doesn't feel like a sales pitch. It's about helping them accomplish what it is that they desire. And when you do all this, when they experience the logic, when they feel and experience the empathy that you care, and it's all in this authentic style, trust gets built. And by the way, then you create these clients for life that are never, ever going to go anywhere else. So this is the foundation that we set. And so as we get into this, let me pull this down. And you're probably going to want to grab a pad, and you're going to want to draw a little bit. So if you got a marker like this, might be handy. We're going to walk through a strategy that I'll date myself a little bit. I started my real estate career in 1987, and started at 23 years old. And I didn't know there was such thing as a bad real estate market. I got into a market where prices were dropping 1.5% a month. And between late 86 and 1991 in Austin, Texas, where I was selling real estate, prices dropped by 50% in a 5-year period. What a lot of the country experienced during the Great Recession, Texas had its in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the challenges I had is this market had been going from a really high, record highs, and it was adjusting dramatically. Now, we're not going to have any kind of adjustment like that in our markets. And yet what I had trouble doing was having people understand the dynamics that influenced where they would price their home just based upon a normal CMA. And they many times got caught in a trap of chasing a market down and actually losing lots of money, or losing opportunity, or not being able to go through their plans. And so I developed something then that I've been able to use in any market to help educate sellers on the right price. Now, you don't have to do this every time. And yet, if you've got a seller that just needs to be educated on price, and they're reluctant to get to where you believe it needs to be right now, this is a conversation that'll help you get the proper price practically every time. In fact, I had an email yesterday from an agent. I taught this from the market center here locally last week. She said, went on a listing appointment the next day, used this strategy, and she said they'd listed at a price lower than what I recommended because they were concerned about the trend. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And they were strongly motivated, and they really desired to sell. So let's go to work. And I'm going to put my document camera on. Oops. Let me get the correct camera. And I want you to draw this out somewhere, and you'll have access to this recording. So if you miss something, you certainly can come back to it later. But here's how this works: is I would go through the normal CMA, and we'd look at the recent solds, we'd look at the pendings, and of course, in a market that's shifting downward, we're also going to take a hard look at the competition. What is the active inventory that we're competing against? And let's say I go through the CMA, and they're going, well, can we, I don't know, we want to sell, but can we price it a little higher? We can always come down. And if I have to, at this point, I'm going to pull out a legal pad, and I'm going to put it down, and I'm not going to have this in a PowerPoint slide. If I've got this in a PowerPoint slide, it's going to feel like I'm selling. And what I really desire to do is educate. And I'll say, well, I'll tell you what, before we make any final decisions about where we price your home, let's kind of go over some of the options. And let me kind of share with you first that there's really 3 prices for every home. I'll say there's market price, and that's where the market's sitting right now today. That's where willing buyers and willing sellers are meeting and getting the home sold. There are some examples of homes selling at what we would call premium pricing. These are the ones that really seem to outperform the market: high demand areas, exceptional condition, and or the market trend. It's really driving it even beyond the most recent market sales activity. And then the other option is, a wholesale price. And this would be that kind of all cash investment buyer. We don't even have to put it on the market. I can get you an all cash offer and have you out of here in a couple of days, 10, 15 days. if you like, without even doing any preparation for showing. Now, before we decide, where we're going to put your home, let's go over the things that might influence where you decide to price your home tonight. Now, by the way, I keep saying where you decide to price it. This is empowering them. It's educating them, then it's empowering them. And I'll say now there's a couple of things that influence where we might decide to price it. And one is the trend. And so you'd write the word trend right here. And so the trend might be, okay, we're trending towards a seller's market to certain degrees. Or we're trending towards a buyer's market. Now, by a seller's market would be defined as less than 5 months of inventory, maybe up to 6, where a buyer's market would be, 6+ months of inventory. And that would be the beginning of a buyer's market. So we could say that the other thing that plays into this is competition, or inventory. Now, the other thing that influences price that we might put on your home is condition. And also how much time you have to accomplish what it is you desire to accomplish in getting your home sold. So now, by the way, on the condition side, if it looks like a model home, it's flawless, that's going to push us up towards premium. On the other extreme, if you've got a bunch of defects or deferred maintenance, well, that's going to pull our pricing strategy back. So, Mr. and Ms. Seller, any questions about the things that might influence where we decide to price your home tonight? And there usually aren't. It's pretty clear. They may ask, well, where are we in the market right now? I said, well, let's talk about that. But before we get into that, here's where I believe we stand on the range. Based upon everything looks like I muted for a minute. Rodrigo, how much did we lose?
No, just barely, like 20 seconds, I think.
Okay. So just saw my lips. So I'm going to go back. Let me pick it up right here. So we go through the CMA, and before we get into that, maybe they ask the question of, well, where are we on this scale right now? And I said, well, let me come to that in a minute. But first, let's talk about everything we looked at in the CMA would suggest that the market price for your home is about $360 right now, based upon the most recent sales, based upon the competition that we see in the market. That would be a really sound price. Now, premium, there is evidence out there to support homes selling in your neighborhood of similar style. Not the most recent sales, yet within the last 4 months or so, that would support $380. And that would be top end, and yet everything would ideally today be working in our favor to get $380. And I can probably get you out of here $335 on a, not putting it on the market quick sale deal would really be the range. And so back to your question then is, where are we in this market? Is, well, right now we've gone from less than 1 month of inventory to now we have ranging on about 3 months of inventory in our market. So what's happening is the trend is moving back towards the middle. And we can't say that with 3 months of inventory that we are in a buyer's market, and yet we're trending towards the middle. And whereas when trend was continuing to work this way in to a buyer's market, to a more extreme buyer's market, to an extreme buyer's market. In fact, people were getting what I would call premium plus, where people were bidding things up. It was an insane amount of time during COVID, and yet that trend is reversed. And now we're seeing more inventory. We're moving back towards the middle. We're by no means at a buyer's market, and yet we're trending this direction. We don't know where the trend is going to stop. And yet what it means is we might want to take that in consideration in where we price your home. Maybe we stay closer to market versus push against the trend or against the tide or against the current, you might say. Now, what they'll say sometime is they'll say, well, Steve, we've got all the time in the world. I mean, we're really not in that much of a rush. And let me ask y'all, if somebody said in this market, we're not in a rush, somebody unmute yourself, what would your response be if you were at this point of the conversation?
I would say you are actually in a rush because you need to catch the market before it drops further during the cold periods of the season.
Amen. There you go. That's it right there. Because I said, well, I said, I'm glad you're not in a rush. And let me share with you that when we're trending this direction, time is not your friend. Because as long as this trend continues, you may see a situation where this becomes future market, premium drops, wholesale drops, and it's not going to drop dramatically. I mean, we're still in a seller's market, but people aren't pushing to premium, and we don't know how much competition you're going to have next week. Now, here's where you're going to have to bring in your local stats. I've been pulling the 7-day hot sheet in my market every single Wednesday. And what is happening in our market right now, every 7 days, new listings are outpacing those going pending every 7 days. By this last week, it was 460. The week before, it was a little over 500. The week before, it was right at 500. And so we had a net gain in 3 weeks of right at 1,500 listings into the market. And so being able to demonstrate that trend, and by the way, we had 900 price adjustments last week. The week before, we had 892. And so the market is it's pushing this way. There is a tide running in this direction. And based upon that factor, I would say we've got to consider staying closer to the middle. But let's go to the other side, Mr. and Ms. Seller. And that is, when you think about the condition of your home, and as we went through your comparisons today, how do you feel your house stacks up in terms of condition compared to some of the competition or some of the ones that I shared with you that recently sold? And they might say, well, and if, by the way, if it's model home condition, you can say, and the great thing is your home is in model home condition. Say it for them. And so you've really got this working for you. And so that's a real positive. That's going to help you stand out in the market. If it's not model home condition, just ask them. So where do you feel like your home stacks up condition wise? Do you feel like it's model home and would help drive towards the premium or upper end? You feel like it's kind of market average good condition, or do you think we got some things to work through? And I say, well, where it's in really good shape, but I mean, it's got a few blemishes. I mean, we're probably good average condition. I say, I would support that. And so then I'm going to say, based upon that, Mrs. Smith Seller, where do you feel like we're best priced to be competitive in today's market? Given the trend, given what we believe the condition of the property to be, where would you feel like you were competitive and that you were going to be able to get to move to blank by blank in the time you desire to be there? And of course, I'm going to call out the specific where they want to go and how soon they want to get there. Their motivation becomes the driver. And now we're helping them understand the factors that could be getting in the way of what it is they desired accomplish. So they're going to say whatever they say. Now, if they say, well, Steve, can we kind of at least give it a shot at 375? And I would say we could do that. I'm a little concerned because I do want to make sure that we get you to, Denver on time, and that we don't succumb to maybe a further tide in new competition that may come and undercut us. One strategy might be, and I'm happy to do this, one strategy might be to go right at market price. And if we catch the market just right, and we're just right for maybe more than one buyer, maybe we create multiple offers like some homes have been having previously, and maybe it bids up a little bit. Whether it goes all the way to 375, I don't know. And yet my concern is if we price it up here and we miss it, will the tide take us lower and delay you getting to Denver? And maybe getting to Denver at a much lower sales price if this tide were to continue to run in this direction. I think either one will be okay. My job is to price watch, and if things change, I'm going to let you know. What would you like to do? So I'm going to pause and let me go back to. I'll keep this on screen for a moment, but what are you hearing in this? What are some of the opportunities in this conversation?
Actually, I think one of the opportunities is when I describe pricing, I show them the final sold versus original listing price for houses in the market for 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, 15 days, 30 days, because the one at 30 days and more usually sell below list price. Yeah. So I tell them that if we don't get the offers within the first 15 days, you're probably not going to get the price that you're looking for, and almost like a bread on the shelf, you will start to look a little less attractive to the buyers, and you're going to generate lower offers from investors at that point.
There you go. Well, and here's another consideration, folks, is that when you start to get into a market, I've been through 3 shifts that have been significant, and sellers forget, or if they've not been through this, and they require guidance to make good decisions. One of the things that you'll find is you've got to watch some leading indicators. Even the market doesn't tell you the truth, because if I'm looking at sales and it's still going okay, it's still 40 days on market, we're not too bad, and yet I'm starting to see an uptick in expired listing. I'm starting to see an uptick in canceled. One of the indicators to watch, and this is a big one, write this down, is the average days on market of the actives. And as you see the actives begin to age, we tend to look at the solds, and yet what happens is you get inventory that's maybe of the average condition, maybe a little overpriced. You're still going to have the model home properties that are selling between market and premium and getting a little bump. And yet where you're going to see some challenges is a stat I would also be watching is the active days on market of the current inventory. And as you see that begin to come up, what's that's telling you is there are a large number of properties, the market saying, you just aren't attractive. I picked somebody else on the dating app because I just didn't, your profile didn't fit. I wasn't interested. It didn't seem like a good value. And of course, we see this in the old traditional conversation of if they've gone, a couple of weeks and no showings, it's probably 10% overpriced. If they've had 10 showings and no offers, it's probably 5, 6, 7% overpriced. The market's saying no, and yet monitoring what's going on with the actives becomes another opportunity. So let me shift gears for a second. Megan, do we have any questions in the chat? Because I want to kind of sum this up a little bit.
It doesn't look like it, just a lot of comments about good information, and they liked the bread on the shelf comparison.
Okay, I don't know who said the bread on the shelf. Did I make that, or did somebody else put that in the chat? If you did, thank you. I like that. So let's talk about this for a second. This is an opportunity where, again, you don't do this with everybody. It's real simple, and you draw it out in front of them, and it becomes you become a teacher or a guide instead of a salesperson. And this is what we teach in Never Ending Referrals. What are the conversations? The reason we're having this conversation today is in our Never Ending Referrals coaching program. We're always focused on how we become the most valued, trusted advisor for the people that we serve. And helping them make great decisions is at the foundation of you being their trusted guide. In a moment, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our group coaching program, Never Ending Referrals. We're beginning again July 11th, and I'd love to have you take part in being part of our program, and I'll share with you some details. In fact, Megan, if you'll put in the chat a link to the 8-session overview of our Never Ending Referrals program. And let me pull this up on screen for you. And before we go into that, I'm going to come back in just a moment and answer questions, take a deeper dive on any of this that you would like. I do want to make an offer to you, and that is Tammy and I begin again on July 11th. That's next Monday with the launch of our Never Ending Referrals coaching program. That's Tammy. I screenshotted her. It's probably not the most, that's the screenshot I got. So there's Tammy. She's on vacation in Mexico. But let me tell you a little bit about our Never Ending Referrals program. Our Never Ending Referrals coaching program will take you through our 8 core lessons of Never Ending Referrals. And so if you want to build a business that is focused on generating a 10% return on your database. In fact, our stated mission at Never Ending Referrals is to get a 10% return on your database and grow it by 250 or more over the next 12 months. And we take you through these 8 lessons, and you have this outline that's been given to you, and really sets the foundation for how did I succeed with a relationship-based business. And as an industry, what we've really, in fact, I don't even think I'm sharing that, am I? So, yeah. What are we doing to really build a relationship-based business? And so we're going to take you through setting a solid foundation for doing that, including the tech tactics. Again, we begin Monday at noon Central with lesson 1. Session 2, we get into really dealing with some of the thinking elements around succeeding with our database. I don't know about you, but I find that every behavioral style has some kind of hang up around succeeding with their relationships with a database. As a high assertive, I avoided it because I didn't like chit chat. And because somebody told me years ago that to do this, you had to be everybody's best friend. And then I learned that I didn't have to be everybody's best friend. I could be their trusted advisor. And so there's a way for everybody to win in this space called relationship-based selling or succeeding through your database. We get into business to business and social media in session 3. If you want to learn all the skills to really be successful with client events, we cover that in session 4. How do we create mind share? Session 5 and session 6, trusted advisor. How do you become that local economist? And we get into the other database, which is geofarming. It's one of those things Gary Keller taught me. He said, everybody has to master 2 things. It's your relationships, and it's at least 1 or 2 other strategies that are listing specific that you can do on high volume, and geofarming fits that bill. Then, of course, we get into video, and we pull it all together with your schedule. So a couple of things that I'll share with you is we go live the first 3 first 3 Mondays of each month, with the exception of this month because of the holiday. So we'll be the last 3 Mondays. We're live. We go live at noon Central. The first 30 minutes is either a tech session or it is, which is the first session of the month. The other two, we have an expert interview, somebody that's really succeeding in a certain space around relationship selling or succeeding with their database. In addition, we provide you with market of the moment scripts each and every quarter when you begin something called DTD2, the DTD2 cycle. And you may have been exposed to that. That was something we created in my market centers back in 2013, I guess it was. So a couple of last thoughts to share with you, and then I want to take your questions. Let me go back to screen share. By the way, I will share that you do have a portal where you can access all your recordings of live sessions and of all the interviews. Everything that we go through in Nevering Referrals will be covered there right for you and accessible in the portal. And then the last thing I want to share with you is how to join us. And if I can actually, here we go. And NeveringReferrals.com would be best way to find us. We go live July 11th. We fully guarantee the program. 30 days. You don't like it, let us know. We'll refund your money. It's $39 a month. It's a 5-month minimum enrollment. And Tammy and I would love to have you on the journey with us. Go NeveringReferrals.com, and I believe Megan has put a registration link in there for you. So if you like these kind of conversations and you want to really learn to add value to your database, we'd love to be your partner in that journey. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I want to go back and answer your questions about this pricing conversation. Maybe your market's different. You have a unique situation. Tell me how I could serve you with your situation. Who's got a question or an aha?
Do you have any advice for sellers who think that their house is the best house on the block? When they say, "Oh, the condition is great, but there is like leaks everywhere."
Well, and thank you for asking that. And it's, I'm sorry, what's your name?
My name is Alina.
Alina. Alina, I love that question because that does happen. People don't have comparison. And I tell you, I did a competition in my own market center when I sold one of my houses. I had our productivity coach program have a competition, and 3 finalists came in and they did their presentation for me. And the one I ultimately listed with at a price, and I was willing to list it at a price lower than she was recommending. And here was why. When she went through the CMA, she pulled out her iPad and she propped it up and she scrolled me through all the pictures of the most recent sales in that neighborhood. And she asked me this question. So let's take a good look at the things that we're using to kind of base the price range on. And let's take a look at these, a couple of homes on the market and these that most recently sold or went pending. And let's compare in your mind how you feel like you compare. Would you say you're similar, or would you say that they have some maybe enhancements that you don't, or that they don't? And by the way, she's sitting in the house with me. And when I see their hardwood floors versus my carpet in the living room, I got to acknowledge that they got nicer floors, or they had, a better quality cabinetry or whatever it was. It was there, so visual, I could not deny it. And here's the important thing. I want y'all to write this down. This is a big one. People can't say no to their own goals. People can't say no to their own goals. And it all starts with every conversation I tie back is, so when we really consider the price, let's look at the competition very objectively, because I know how important it is to get to Dallas, by the end of August. And so we want to make sure we really make the right decision today. So let's look at this and really size ourselves up. And you ask them to make the comment. When they say it, it's real. And if they're hallucinating, then you may have to say, well, here's my experience. These things have been more favorable to more consumers, and just talk about the market. It's not your opinion. What's the market? So great question. Thank you. Somebody else, what's your question? Or I've got some in the chat. Average days on market for active listings we should use. Yeah, Marietta, is that one of the things to again, keep an eye on. What is the average days on market of the actives? And if you're seeing a pronounced trend in those going up, that's telling us a story. We may not see the days on market going down dramatically on those that sold. Yet if inventory is growing and those that are in active inventory are aging, the average days on market aging longer, those are the ones the market are rejecting. Those are the ones that are going to start getting more and more price reductions and coming back into the market later at a lower price, maybe a dramatically lower price. And so putting a lot of emphasis and watching the trend on your price reductions becomes a big deal. Yeah. Questions?
Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Yes.
So Levita asked, can the Never Ending Referrals program help convert the strangers who've been sitting in my database for years, or should I delete them and start with METs?
Well, our focus is on METs, yet we do have some dialogues that we bring to bear on, what I call, one of the video scripts, for example, is "Who the heck are you?" script. You're in my you're in my database, and I'm not sure how we connected. Did you have a real estate plan at one time? So the only thing that really is going to identify whether that's a worthwhile pursuit is a conversation or a text message, something that's going to create an engagement. And yet what I would say is in Never Ending Referrals, when we have you set up your database, you're going to go through some tech tutorials, and you set up your database DTD2. I would do DTD2 setup, and that stands for Do the Database 2. You'll learn that if you haven't already in one of your market centers or in Bold. If you've taken Bold, by the way, the more recent versions of Bold, the database portions of Bold are powered by Never Ending Referrals, and yet it's only about 30% of our content. So this is the deep dive on your METs, and yet we all have I call it acres of diamonds in our database of people that we could convert into opted-in relationships with the right conversation, with the right value adds. And yet I wouldn't put that group on a 36 or 40 touch right away. I would employ a strategy that involves identifying the nature of the relationship. And if I make a connection, the question is going to be, just curious, who do you trust with your real estate questions? And if it's, really don't have anybody, I publish quarterly newsletter. I would love to be a resource for you. Would that be okay? What's your most preferred email? And simply get them opted in, and now they've become a MET. But then you got to stay consistent. So questions, feel free to raise your hand. You can go down below, raise your hand, and I'll call on you and bring you into the conversation. All right. Got to put on the glasses. Hannah, go ahead.
So thank you. I have a client who, one client we priced when we saw the market, we could have priced it around $750 and we wanted to get it sold quickly, and she was on board. We priced it at $700 and it sat, and it's just been crickets, and we've dropped the price. Now it's on hold because she's dealing with some health stuff. But we're going to put it back and drop the price again. But I feel like at this point, we're chasing the market on that. And then I have another client who has been very difficult, surprisingly difficult to work with. Insisted that her house was as valuable as the one that had this fabulous greenbelt view that you could see for miles. And every time I would say, and I would not put it offensively, your house is so beautiful. What an appraiser is going to see with that view is about $50,000 of value, at least somewhere around there. So we have to consider that in the price. And she actually stomped her foot at me and was very annoyed that I kept bringing up the view.
Mhm.
And where I wanted to price it was 715, 720, and she insisted that we price it at 759.9.
Mhm.
And it's been sitting on the market. So she agreed to one $20,000 price reduction, and then finally agreed to another, and now it's priced at 719.9, where I
Mhm.
wanted to start, but now we've been on the market 32 days. So what is your suggestion for, I mean, aside from walking away from this client, what is your
Yeah.
suggestion with what to do now that we are in this game of chasing the market?
Well, and that's where this is where this comes into price reduction conversation. And I want to explain to you what's going on in the market right now. And, when we priced your home originally, we kind of chose a premium price. And, I had recommended at the time, the recommended price, but here's what's been happening. The tide of the market has been coming back this direction. We missed the market when it was sliding this way because we were priced out of the market. Now with the tide coming back this way, market may actually be slipping a little bit. And we're really frankly in a position where we've got to get in front of it. And the strategy today might be actually price it a little bit below market, put it at 695 and see if we can generate multiple offers, or at least get it sold before the market might decide to go a little deeper in terms of adjustments. And of course, everything, and you sit down and it's all about their motivation. It's what is it that they wanted to accomplish? And I'm concerned right now that with what the market's doing, I'm seeing the active days on market trending up of those that are not selling, meaning they're staying on the market longer. We had X number of price reductions in the market last month. There are going to be other sellers like you who really desire to sell, that if this market keeps trending, they're going to force the market down. And so the question is, if you want to sell in the next 6 months, let's get in front of this, or the next year, let's get in front of this and get sold. If you're okay waiting a couple of years, we might want to go park on the sideline if we're reluctant to get out in front of the market. And by the way, either one's okay. I don't know where the bottom of this is going to be. If you have a few years and, to work through a recession, and see where the market lands, it may take a couple of years to get back to where even we thought we could be a couple of months ago. But that's the conversation I would have, Hannah.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
My pleasure. Hey, Janet Bloodworth's on here, one of our longtime part of our community and Never Ending Referrals. We've got folks been with us for 2.5 years because we keep having these kind of conversations to make sure that you're ready for the market. You're adding value to the folks in your database. Levita, I'm coming to you. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Lavetta Hudson, Metro Atlanta. Okay, I have a client who sold him a house years ago. He paid the house off. He stands to make about $270 on the house. Told me he wants to move to Savannah. I'm like, okay, great. But then he tells me last week or a couple of weeks ago, he says, well, I think I'm going to wait until the market corrects itself. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what? So, and I'm thinking, and y'all help me out, is he thinking correct itself where he wouldn't have to pay as much for a house to where he's going? But if he does that, he's going to lose the maximum price on the house he has now. And I'm trying to get him to let me in the house. He's not letting me in that house. So
yeah, motivation is everything, folks. So it's like right now, deal only with the motivated. And if there's not a reason for somebody to be somewhere, they're maybe at a very low interest rate, and to go get them to trade a low interest rate for a high interest rate, and they really don't have motivation or need to be anywhere, they may sit on the sidelines, and that's okay. And so it becomes a battle of finding the motivated. Now, here's the thing that I would share with you. Can I give y'all a conversation to have with everybody in your database? Give me a thumbs up if that would be okay. Yeah. Particularly anybody you sold a home to in the last 5-6 years in many of our markets. So my question for you would be, how many of you sold a house to somebody and that purchase was a compromise? It was not their forever home. It was not the ideal home. They just had to have a darn house. And I will bet you, and I know in my markets, I've had my agents tell me, gosh, that, that might be 60% of my buyers, might be more than 60% of my buyers. And so the opportunity as inventory starts to build, yeah, it's a higher interest rate. And yet it could be the opportunity for them to get their forever home because they've got options now. And they're selling in the same market they're buying. Yes, money is going to be more expensive. Yet how much equity have they earned that they're going to be able to put down, on that house? And as we've heard, we've seen a lot of people put on social media, marry the house, date the rate. And if the rate comes down, they can always refinance. Now, by the way, here's what I would say to you. I would use the word if it comes down, you can refinance, because we are still, when you track this over the last, since going back to 1990, the median interest rate was 5.98%. And so we're really at the long-term median since 1990. And will we see 3% or 4% again? I'm not 100% convinced that we will in the next 10 years. We very well could, depending on how deep a recession we have to bail out of. And if we do, then there's a refinance opportunity. And most of our markets are going to go back to a low inventory situation within 6 to 12 months post-recession, because we still haven't built enough homes in most of our markets. And so, again, these become trusted advisor conversations. So that said, I'm going to take any other questions. I do want to invite you again, and Megan, if you'll put the link in the chat, if you'd like to join Tammy and I on Monday at noon Central for Never Ending Referrals and begin that journey through the 8 lessons. $39 a month is your investment to join us. There's a 5-month minimum. We've got, like I said, folks have been with us 2-3 years on this journey because we're focused on building mastery around this thing called your most valuable asset, called your database. And if that's a journey you'd like to go on, we'd like to be your partners in making that happen. And again, we bring you the latest tech on how to make Command, how to make Facebook work for you, or any CRM. We are CRM agnostic. So somebody on here said, if I'm not with KW, will this work for me? Absolutely, this will work for you, because it's not about a CRM. It's about your strategy and how you really deploy that position of being the trusted advisor. Let me see what we got in the chat. Trudy, thank you so much. Great content, scripts. My pleasure. Janet, always nice to have you with us, Janet. Cheryl, if you miss a session, can you catch the session? And yeah, it's all on the portal. So everything is there. Marcia, no promo code needed. Just go to the registration link that if you scroll up to the 117 mark in the chat, you'll see the registration link, and that'll take you right to the registration page at MAPS Coaching. You can go to mapscoaching.com, find Never Ending Referrals under Fast Track or Group, or go to neverendingreferrals.com and we'll find you there. Anybody else have anything to share? Ahas? I'll take 2 minutes and then we'll wrap it up. Hey, John, go ahead.
Hey, Steve, I just want to say thank you so much. I had a great aha personally. In my market center, we started talking about bringing those market stats to the listing appointments to be able to reference them, especially right now. I mean, they're pretty easy to understand. However, I think this is really a good approach to making it neutral and also allowing for that self-discovery for the client. Because when it's coming from them, it's a lot more easier to accept. So I really appreciate it. This was truly a great item of value, and I appreciate you for your time.
My pleasure, John. My pleasure. Hey, and guys, I do want to tell you that whole thought of having them choose the price, and you got to, any price you put down there, that 3 with the low to the high, has to be a list price that you would be willing to have, that you could justify in your own mind. Don't tell them a premium price that you couldn't even justify. And yet you're going to say, and that's a little suspect. I can justify it. And yet that's a stretch given the tide of where things are going. Perfect. All right. Marcia, what do we track in weekly hot sheets again, please? Marcia, weekly hot sheet, the things that I'm particularly looking at are how many price declines have we had? What is the ratio of new listings active versus those going pending? You start getting, our stat, I'm going to round it a little bit. Last 7 days, this was last night when I pulled it in San Antonio, we had 1,100 go active and we had 800 go pending. Actually, I take it back. So 700 something go pending. So we keep having this gap every 7 days of, 400 or 500 listings different between how many are being listed and how many are going pending. We're building inventory. So you want to watch that trend. What's happening active versus what's going pending. New listings active versus going pending. And what's your listing count? Those become the critical ones. Yeah. Anything else? Hey, I trust I'll see a bunch of you on Monday on Never-Ending Referrals, and we'd love to begin the journey with you. And thanks for spending a little time with us on your Thursday afternoon. And it's been our pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.